Good evening. Thank you for coming tonight. Before I call the meeting to order, our Superintendent of Schools, Mr. David Munoz, would like to say a few words.
Just like to ask, once I'm finished, that we recognize on 9/11 a moment of silence to do with what you choose, with the understanding that a lot lost their lives on 9/11, but also it was a time that activated this country and a lot of military service, men and women, to serve abroad, and some never came home. So I'd like to recognize that at this time. Thank you for that. And as a dad of a military son, it means a lot.
Thank you. I would like to call the September 11th, 2023 Menomonee Falls Board of Education Annual Budget Hearing Meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Smith, was the meeting properly posted?
Yes, it was.
Thank you. This is the School District of Menomonee Falls Board of Education Annual Budget Hearing Meeting. It is being held at Menomonee Falls High School Auditorium at N80 W14350 Titan Drive, Menomonee Falls, Wisconsin 53051. This meeting will be broadcasted by Falls Cable Access and can be viewed live on the Falls Cable Access YouTube channel. To watch the recorded meeting, please visit our website at www.fallschools.org/board. Sitting to my far right is Ms. Caitlin Windler, Director of Finance and Operations. She'll be giving the annual budget presentation tonight.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us here tonight. This is our 23-24 budget hearing. My name is Caitlin Windler, and I serve as our district's Director of Finance and Operations. Budget materials and all presentation materials can be found on our website under Annual Meeting, or if you picked up the little handout on the way in, there's a QR code and you can scan that and follow along with your phone as well. An agenda for tonight's presentation will start with factors in this year's financial results, including celebrations across our district. We'll talk through 22-23's budget recap and spend a lot of time in 23-24's budget, including tax levy and mill rate conversations as well. Over the years, we've gathered community feedback regarding which aspects the community feels are most important for our school district, and these are ways in which our district functions each and every day. These are prioritizing a safe environment for students and staff, living within our means, demonstrating fiscal responsibility, providing market competitive compensation and benefits, demonstrating efficient and effective operations, being clear and transparent, and keeping our community informed. We do so in a number of ways, and one of these is through our Finance and Operations Accountability Calendar. This document is what guides our finance board finance committee meetings throughout the year and our full board committee meetings. So we have annual standing items, things like school safety and security drill reporting. We have vouchers that are approved at every board meeting. We review gifts to the school district and so on. So this is a standing document that helps our community understand which items that we review on a regular basis throughout the community. And we also have a similar document for our budget planning process. So again, everybody's able to see when we do which aspect of our budget cycle, which is very cyclical and stays the same from year to year. So those items happen both within the finance committee meetings, full board committee discussion, and action. And also in the budget publication packet, which is found on our website, is a more thorough document regarding our budget development calendar. And this you can see the actual dates in which our board committee and full board will be taking discussion and action on the budget throughout the school year. There are items in different colors. The yellow items on this agenda are the items that the board takes action on. So you can see when those specific items will be happening throughout the year, if there's something that you have a particular interest in hearing about or participating in discussion. And on that note too, you can see in the top right corner, there are 21 public discussion opportunities that happen throughout the course of the budget year, where our community is welcome to participate in discussion at board meetings or listen in at board committee meetings as well. When we get to the October portion of our budget, or this annual meeting time, we're nearing the end of our budget cycle. So we have a few final budget factors that are approved at the end of October each year, which is then when our final budget will be approved. Starting with celebrations, one of the things that our school district has done consistently over the years and will continue to do so in the future is thinking of our budget in terms of multiple years, not just 1 year at a time. And we are ending the 22-23 fiscal year with a positive variance in our general operating fund, or Fund 10. Our budget continues to have a clean audit opinion from our auditors. We're continuing to wrap up the 22-23 fiscal year, so I'll often refer to that year when we talk about it as unaudited, because we're still closing our books in that regard, and once the audit is complete, then we have audited data. So right now when we talk about 22-23, it's still unaudited, as factors could still change. We wouldn't anticipate any major swings though in our 22-23 budget. And then finally, and probably most importantly on this list, is that our district continues to be identified as exceeds expectations on the DPI school report card. In terms of facilities, a major important aspect of our school district is our facilities team and the work that they do annually throughout the year to keep our buildings looking awesome and extending their useful life. So we have a number of different ways in which our facilities team goes about this. We have ongoing maintenance, which includes HVAC and roofs and electrical. We have summer deep cleaning that takes place annually, and then planned projects throughout the year. I'll talk through a few of those at each building in the next few slides here. So starting with Riverside, there was a soccer wall that really broke up a lot of the green space in their open area. So our facilities team was able to remove that and plant grass, so it really opened up, freed up some of that green space for students to run around and better utilize that space. At Valley View, we now have whiteboards installed, so that's a major upgrade for those teachers and students at the school where they previously had chalkboards, and sometimes they weren't even very easy to write on, so Valley View's whiteboards will be a major upgrade for that school and staff and students alike. And also we now have Valley View's colors proudly on display with a new paint job in the hallways, so that's bright and cheery if you ever have a chance to step into Valley View. At Shady Lane, everybody loves the parking lot update, right? So we have a parking lot reseal and repaint, both parking lots at Shady Lane. And there's also a fence improvement, so this picture is a little hard to see, but there was a big gap, about a foot at the bottom of the fence, so that fence now comes all the way to the ground. So an improvement there for many reasons. At Ben Franklin, we have a new electrical gate near the playground for safety, and also the courtyard landscaping has been updated with matting and mulching, so it's looking beautiful at Ben Franklin. Across all of our elementaries, we now have new elementary furniture, round 1 of 3 in terms of the updates for elementary furniture. So we have flexible arrangements, furniture that's suited for the grade levels. It's more inviting and easier to use. So our students and our teachers are excited about that and had the first week to use it so far. At the middle school, we had 3 exterior stairs repaired over the summer. We had many new roof sections complete at North Middle School per our capital project maintenance plan. And then we also had 31 classroom moves to help better accommodate traffic for students and staff throughout the day, which was a huge undertaking. So shout out to our team at North Middle School for completing those classroom moves over the summer. At the high school, if you came in the front entrance, you might have seen our secure front entrance, which was the last school building to have that secure entrance complete. So no longer can somebody come in and just walk in the building. You have to be buzzed in or use your ID to get into the school building.
Yeah, that high school picture slide right here, that's what's known in security business with school security, a limited access entry. It's unfortunate that we have to think about things this way, but it's extremely important in today's day and age to have that the way that it is. So we're very appreciative of that allotment of dollars.
Thank you, Mr. Munoz. So we'll move into our budget context and strategy. So I'm going to go big picture for the state budget and what that means for us. So the state works on a biennial budget basis, which means the state approves a 2-year budget. This is the budget that drives our school district's revenues. Historically, back in 1993, when school revenue limits were enacted, per pupil increases were tied to inflation, or CPI, Consumer Price Index. When the recession hit in 2008, those two stopped being equal. So the state stopped funding school revenue increases at the rate of inflation, and rather a per pupil dollar amount was what increased the revenue limit. In the last biennial budget, so the 21-23 biennial budget, there were 2 years of $0 per pupil increases in a row. The legislature ultimately decided to freeze revenue as school districts received one-time COVID relief funding, or ESSER, elementary and secondary school relief funding. This year, we're now in the first year of the next biennial budget. So the 23-25 state biennial budget is what was just approved. And as part of that budget, $325 per pupil increases were included for both the 23-24 school year and the 24-25 school year. We're also in this current fiscal year spending the remaining of our ESSER funding, which is $2.3 million approximately. We have $1.5 million for budget stabilization. We also have an additional $800,000 for a few big projects. We have wireless access points, which improve the Wi-Fi throughout our district, school safety enhancements, which largely will probably be updated and new cameras within our schools, and curriculum adoptions.
Just to put a little bit into the school safety enhancements, we're not totally done with how much that will be, but it'll be probably around $100,000, not to exceed of the $800,000. The curriculum adoptions has to do with English, ELA, and social studies specifically. So those adoptions will occur this year, which are tied to some changes at the state level. So when it says curriculum adoptions, that'll be ELA and social studies. Specifically, the school safety enhancements are in all buildings, and we're still working through the final pieces of that. I green-lighted that within the last month myself, school safety enhancements.
Great. And as we budget, we are always intentional, conservative, yet realistic. So I'll just equate that to just being accurate in both revenues and expenses. We always want to be as accurate as possible so that we're not overextending ourselves, or on the other hand, also pulling back too far, and then we've cut more than we needed to in order to balance our budget. So we work to be conservative yet realistic as we plan for our budget. We always plan with the long term in mind, so we continue to do that as we've done in the past, and we've realized significant financial benefits of previous cost control strategies. One of these is our self-funded health insurance plan, which has been a huge impact on our school district, as our premiums, both employee and employer, have not changed in the last 5 years. We also have ongoing discussions to address some upcoming budget shortfalls due to the end of ESSER funding in future years. This is not 23-24, this is 24-25 and beyond. 23-24 is the last year that ESSER funding is available to spend. So we're working through, again, planning into the future, what that will look like for 24-25. So going into some of those cost control strategies that we've implemented over the years, I enjoy this slide because I think it's actually pretty impressive from just the things that the district has done in the past and that we continue to do in the future. So first, starting with debt refinance savings. Over the last number of years, the school district has refinanced a number of times, saving over $4 million in direct taxpayer savings since 2006. When we borrow funds, that comes with an interest expense, and when times allow, we can refinance and therefore reduce the amount of interest that we pay. And when it's referendum approved debt, so we have debt on our books from years ago, when we have refinancing referendum approved debt or Fund 39 debt, that reduces that levy needed for Fund 39 for those interest payments. So over the last, since 2006, number of years, we've refinanced a few times and saved over $4 million in direct taxpayer savings.
So
go ahead.
Two big things on this slide. There's a lot of big things, great things, but Fund 38, the 38 and 39 are legal approvals over the past years to go beyond the revenue limit. We're paying off Fund 38 altogether. So by doing that, we don't have to spend as much out of the general fund, which means we're making that money, we're creating that money. Fund 39, refinancing or defeasements, there's always opportunities that come when you can do that. One other big piece in here is not borrowing to make payroll. Many districts in the state of Wisconsin, there's only 400, they spend down their fund balance too far, and the reason that is the state of Wisconsin doesn't send schools all the money on July 1st. They actually send it like 5 or 6 times or something like that throughout the year. So we have to keep a fund balance in order to make payroll, okay? That's one of those little hidden things that it happens everywhere that way, okay? So that's a really important piece. A lot of districts get in trouble about borrowing in a high interest environment like right now in order to make payroll. We're not in that situation at all.
So to expand on that, we have regular expenses. So we have invoices we pay weekly, we have payroll we pay twice a month, and like Mr. Munoz said, our revenue comes in a few big chunks. So we actually don't get our first big property tax payment, which is our first large revenue source, until mid-January. And our fiscal year starts July 1, so we literally go through half of our fiscal year before we get our first large revenue. And that is why we have to maintain a fund balance of a certain percentage in order to reduce or eliminate the need to cash flow borrow. So we've eliminated the need to cash flow borrow and haven't had to do so in the last few years, which is, again, a savings because we're not paying an interest from a borrowing that, that didn't have to happen. We also will talk through later in this presentation a projected tax levy and tax mill rate decrease projected from 22-23 to 23-24. We also have seen over the years a large reduction and avoidance in energy costs due to our facilities team and the work they've put in that area in creating efficiencies. And then as I mentioned, our self-funded health insurance plan has created a lot of savings for us. Market trend has been anywhere between 10 and 15% increases in health insurance, and we've managed to avoid that altogether, stay well below and function within our budget for health insurance within our self-funded plan, therefore reducing or eliminating, I should say, the need in the last few years to increase premiums, which has been a savings both for our employees and for the school district itself. So go into a brief recap of 22-23's budget before we head into 23-24. We're still completing the final field work for our audit, so again, these numbers are not finalized, and that's why you'll see that note of unaudited at the top. And when we're projecting our year-end, variance right now of about a positive $1.4 million. But as part of the 23-24 budget, about 1.2 of that will be spent in the form of carryover for a number of capital improvement projects. So we anticipate a net gain at the end of the day, when all is said and done, of about $200,000. $200,000 is of course a large number, but when we take it into context of our whole budget, that's about 3.7%. Which is a great place to be. We no longer have to be pumping money into fund balance. We are at a great fund balance place right now, and look to maintain that fund balance position over the years. I'll show a graph in a few slides too, where you can see what the trend has been, and then where we're at in terms of what the credit rating agencies indicate as best practice. Due to our positive variance in 22-23, we had 1.8 budgeted for budget stabilization and only needed to utilize 1 million of that, which freed up $800,000 to use in 23-24. And we talked through the number of ways which that will be used, including additional cameras or camera updates, curriculum, and wireless access points throughout our school district.
The only catch with that $800,000 is we have to make sure that it's spent and the items purchased received before the end of June of 2024. But we're dialed into that, and we'll make sure that happens.
And then what we do each year when we're coming to the conclusion of our budget is, and throughout the year I should say too, is analyze exactly where our savings is, and we saw positive variance in a few key areas that essentially netted us that positive budget variance, that positive budget position for year end 22-23. One of the significant areas, which has to do with the time period that we're in, is inflation. So we saw a very large increase in the amount of interest that we're earning in our cash flow. So we are almost $700,000 more than budgeted in terms of that revenue in the 22-23 fiscal year from what we budgeted to what we received in our interest. And then this graph here kind of shows the picture of fund balance as I was referring to. Fund balance is not cash. It's made up of some cash, but it's not entirely cash. It's our year-end equity, which is our assets minus our liabilities. This is a very healthy position to be in. It's important that we have this cash or part of it is cash, so that we can avoid that short-term interest or cash flow borrowing, as we talked about in the recent slide. And then bond rating agencies have a best-in-class for school districts with a fund balance of about 25%. So ours will be about 35% at the end of the 22-23 fiscal year, and this high fund balance percentage attributes to our bond credit rating at a AA2, which is a very strong credit rating. It's in the high grade, and this means that if and when we do have to borrow funds, they would come at a reduced interest rate. So credit ratings are important, and school districts do have them, and they do help if and when school districts do borrow in order to receive lower interest rates.
Yeah, big picture, 30,000 feet. The district's finances are extremely healthy. We're fully funded in our post-retirement benefits for our staff, which is not common in the state of Wisconsin. So that's a Fund 73. I know we're coming to that, but I'm just trying to give the big picture here. We're financially solid and strong. We have some debt in Fund 39, which is common, but we're eliminating one big piece of debt and freeing up that money to be used for staff and students.
So we've talked a lot about a few different funds now. We've talked about Fund 38 and Fund 39. Those are our debt service funds. So going back to the big picture, school districts are required to use fund accounting. So our operating dollars are kept in Fund 10, or the general operating budget, separate from other activities. So here we'll recap the various funds and what they are. Fund 21 is student activity accounts, and this is where our clubs and organizations are held. So their revenues that they're earning throughout the year, their expenses when they're fundraising for something, and then they're buying those new uniforms or the shirts or the materials, whatever it happens to be. Our revenues and expenses in Fund 21 saw a slight increase from the prior year. In Fund 27, this is our special education fund. We again had very consistent expenses from the prior year with both overall expenses and our local transfers. So what happens with special education, or Fund 27, is not all of it is funded by the state. So roughly $5.2 million is taken from our general operating fund, or Fund 10, and transferred to Fund 27 each year. Fund 27 must maintain a $0 fund balance. So that transfer is something that all school districts do if they have Fund 27 or special education expenses, and our transfer each year is about $5 million, a little over, and our transfer from 22-23 was very consistent with the prior year. Fund 38 debt had planned principal and interest payments, but again, as Mr. Munoz said, in 23-24 will be the last Fund 38 debt payments. We're completely eliminating that debt, which then that frees up those dollars, go back to our general operating budget. Fund 39 works differently and is outside of the revenue limit. It is referendum approved debt, so for any prior referendums that are still on our books, that's that debt. And we had in 22-23 discussion of a potential defeasance. However, we were moving into an unknown state budget. So at the time, in the spring of last year, or spring of 23, we didn't have an approved state budget yet, so there were too many unknown variables that didn't allow us to make an educated decision on whether or not it was wise to do a defeasance. Instead, we decided, let's move that discussion to spring of 24, where we now have an approved state budget. We're in the middle of a biennial budget year and have all of the factors that we need to know in terms of what a defeasance would do to our tax levy and mill rate. In the Fund 40s, this is our capital projects funds. There was no activity. This is where any activity from prior referenda would have happened, and all of that completed in a prior year. Fund 50 is our food service fund. In 22-23, we had planned use of fund balance for equipment that was end of life, so we had some updates to equipment on serving lines that will increase the speed of service, and has already in the first week of school across our buildings. In Fund 73, this is that OPEB trust fund, which was referenced earlier, where we have no longer a liability in terms of our OPEB, other post-employment benefits, and we do have funds held in this fund for future use. Our board has indicated wanting discussions of how that could look for our staff, so we will start having those discussions within finance committee meetings, and then when ready, taken to the full board when what kind of plan could work for our school district in terms of using those OPEB funds, which are no longer needing to be committed to retiree benefits, and creating a new plan that can utilize those dollars without overextending ourselves.
Yeah, Fund 73 is an amazing opportunity for our staff. It's post-employment benefits, so monies that's allotted there can't be moved. So what it essentially means that staff who are set to retire from the district and that have been promised X and Y and these sorts of things, it's fully paid for. That can't be said in many districts in the state of Wisconsin. So that's a wonderful thing to be at, but it's actually better than that. So what Caitlin was just discussing was we need to go look into using the surplus funds that exist there to see what other benefits we could increase for our staff with respect to post-employment. That's what that is. So that's a big piece and work that we need to do in the near term.
And then closing it up in terms of funds, with Fund 80, which is our community service fund. So this is where all CE and rec activity happens, again, separately from our general operating budget. And we saw participation in CE and rec meet pre-pandemic levels, which is awesome, but at the same time we were faced with staffing shortages. So we had additional revenue coming from that increased activity, yet we had fewer expenses than planned because we weren't fully staffed. So we did see a positive variance of $185,000 in CE and rec, or Fund 80, and working to meet those staffing shortages and become fully staffed within the 23-24 fiscal year. So next we'll recap the 23-24 budget and then move into tax levy and mill rate. As part of the electronic materials, there's a budget publication, so that's linked on whether you go to the website or the QR code. You can follow along in that document or reference it later. I'll reference a few times different pages of that document. What the board approved in July was it was a July meeting and an August meeting. Discussion and action was the preliminary budget. So we're talking through a preliminary 23-24 budget. Even though we're already in September and the year has started, our budget isn't actually approved until the end of October. There are a few key budget factors: equalization aid, equalized property value, our resident membership, that dictate our overall revenue, and then our tax levy and our mill rate. So those factors we learn in October, and that's when our final budget is approved at the end of October. Budget goals and priorities that we keep in mind throughout our budget process and really guide our process are the following. Improving student achievement is always our number one goal. I should say, like, second to safety, as we've talked about a number of times already tonight. So student achievement and staff performance, and making sure the budget aligns with whatever's needed to keep moving that forward. Ensuring appropriate class size ratios and student programming for the success of college and career transitions. Sustaining efficient and effective operations across our district. Focusing resources on strategic improvement priorities. And of course, safeguarding the taxpayer investment through high organizational performance. So those are the guiding factors as we develop our budget. The budget process is annual and cyclical. The same things happen each year at the same time. So right now we're in our final budget approval stage, where we're working through our annual meeting, which is an important part of our budget process. And then we have in October some of those final factors, as I've mentioned, are firmed up, or then our final budget is approved and tax levies are certified at the end of October. In December through February, we're aligning strategic priorities with our budget planning, and March through May focuses on communicating a budget plan and approving staffing levels for the coming year. So I like to say it's always budget season. Moving into Fund 10 as a highlight, we have key budget adjustments on page 16 of the packet, which reflect the key changes from the prior year into 23-24. We have a state biennial budget approval of $325 per pupil increase in both 23-24 and 24-25. Again, we're just talking about 23-24 tonight, but we keep the prior years or the future years in mind as we plan our budget, which is why I keep referencing 24-25. And then also important to note is that for 21-22 and 22-23, the state legislators substituted those federal COVID relief dollars, or ESSER, for what would normally be funding increases from the state. And page 17 shows the funding of ESSER funds allocated to the school district of Menomonee Falls. I have a snippet up here as well. So $4.7 million overall is what the school district, over the number of years from when COVID started to 23-24 will receive in total in terms of ESSER dollars. We have $2.3 million budgeted for 23-24. Again, $1.5 million is budget stabilization, which was what our school district did, very similar to other school districts across the state of Wisconsin, when we received no new per pupil funding and instead had the ESSER dollars to use. And so $1.5 million of that is remaining for budget stabilization for 23-24. And then we also have $800,000 for those few other large projects that we've talked about. DPI has a lot of information on their website if you're interested in learning more about the specific costs that are eligible for ESSER. There are different waves or different categories of ESSER. There's ESSER 1, 2, and 3, and then within those there's also different allocations. So that's why on that prior slide you're seeing so many different lines for ESSER. There's any information you could possibly want to know is out on DPI's website in terms of ESSER if you're interested in learning more. The budget scorecard is what highlights our changes from the prior year to the current year. And this document is living and breathing. This is what kind of guides our conversation from cabinet and administration and leadership conversations to then board finance committee and full board conversations, and shows how we ultimately came to achieve a balanced budget from what we're looking at from the starting point of a deficit to what we reduced along the way in order to achieve that balanced budget. So this is found on page 16 of the budget packet. Highlighting some of our other funds, we have Fund 50, so again, that's our school nutrition fund or food service fund. And for 23-24, again, we have planned use of fund balance for updating remaining equipment that is at end of life, and that some of that happened over the summer, so we're really happy to have started the year with some of that new equipment, and we'll plan on continuing those needed updates for the 23-24 fiscal year as well. And in Fund 80, our budget includes an increase to the levy to support wages and utility cost increases, but also we now have partial funding of our 3 school resource officers within Fund 80. This is common across Wisconsin school districts. It is new this is the first time for us. We've previously funded our entirety of our school resource officers within Fund 10 or a general operating budget. We now have 50% of our school resource officer expense within Fund 80, which is very reflective of the role of the officers, and that their activity often travels beyond the 4 walls of the school buildings.
Yeah, I can jump in at Fund 80. That's a change that I recommended, and I'm glad that it's in the budget. We moved from 2 school resource officers to 3, and are shifting where we're levying that instead of to Fund 10 to Fund 80. So essentially what occurs is we're able to increase the level of safety for the district, but we're actually decreasing the amount of money that we're spending out of the general fund. In other words, money for students and for staff by doing that. And overall, the levy is still, the mill rate is dropping from 7.75 to roughly about 7.12. So in that process, the mill rate is declining. We're just shifting where some of that money are spent. In the previous 2 districts that I have been in, including the last one as superintendent, Fund 80 is where you do find these sorts of expenses.
So we'll move into a breakdown of our budget in terms of revenues and expenses and levy and total expenses with graphs, because I think this helps understand the big picture. So I'm going to go back to the 30,000 foot view of revenue limits and how schools are funded. So a revenue limit formula is what tells schools how much they'll receive in terms of revenue in the forms of property tax payments and state aid. So that calculation tells us the total revenue from property taxes and state aid. The state tells us how much equalization aid or state aid we will receive. So we take that total revenue limit dollar, subtract out our aid, and that equals our general operating tax levy. You can see from this graph that we're highly funded in terms of the local taxes, and then 34% of our budget or revenue comes from state. So that means we're more heavily funded from local taxes. The way that this works in the whole equalization aid picture is that the more property rich you are in comparison, you as in the school district, in comparison to the state average on a per pupil basis, the more property rich, the less aid the school districts receive. So that is why it's called the equalization aid or equalization aid formula, because it equalizes based on the revenues, the property values per pupil compared to the state average. So school districts who are more property poor compared to more property poor compared to the per pupil average in the state receive higher amounts of aid. So this just shows that we're more heavily funded from the local property taxes than state aid. And then on the expenses side, this breakdown is very similar to other school districts across the state of Wisconsin, where salaries and benefits make up the majority of our budget. So for us, it's about 70% of our budget goes to salaries and benefits for our staff. And then when you look at our overall total expenditures from all funds, you can see that our general operating budget is the majority of our expenditures. So that's where most of our stuff happens, most of our operating happens, our classroom expenditures, etc. And then special ed is next. So 13% of our total expenditures happen within special education, or Fund 27. And then much smaller pieces of our pie are debt service at 5% of our overall expenditures, CE and Rec, or community service, at 4% of our overall expenditures, and food service at 2%. A breakdown of our overall property tax levy. One of the components of the annual meeting is that the community votes on the tax levy, and the tax levy is comprised of revenue for a few different funds. The majority is our general fund, which you can see in the blue, and you can see the other components, which include debt service at 19% of our overall levy, and community service, or CE and Rec, as a much smaller portion of our levy. The general fund levy is most impacted by changes in state aid. So we talked about the overall picture of the revenue limit formula, revenue limits and then subtract out aid equals the property tax levy. If aid increases, then the levy would decrease. So going back to that big picture, when we talk about if aid goes up, the tax levy goes down, and then also impacted are the per pupil rates and choice and charter voucher. So those rates have increased, and what that does to our tax levy is we basically increase our tax levy by that amount, which for us is a little over $1 million, and then we have an equal expense to pay it right back out. So our total tax levy, I'd say about the 1.2 million is about 3% of our overall tax levy that goes towards the voucher and charter schools from our school district. Moving into the property tax trend over time, we will focus on our mill rate, but it's also important when we're in an inflationary period like we are, where home values are increasing, to take a look at our overall tax levy as well. So this graph shows it's been fairly consistent, hovering right under that $40 million mark. We do project a decrease of about 1.68 million, or 1.68%, excuse me, moving into the 23-24 fiscal year. We can see this as a slight decrease from the prior year, and the proportions, though, of the different funds are staying largely the same. So moving into the formula for our tax levy and then how we calculate our mill rate from there, the total tax levy is, again, projected to decrease by about 1.68%, so just a touch under $38 million. When we receive our total tax levy amount within this calculation, we then take the equalized value, which at this point is an estimate. So we learn this factor in October. Right now we're projecting a 7% increase in equalized value. So we take our total tax levy divided by our equalized value, and that equals our mill rate. Mill rate is the tax per every $1,000 of property value. The mill rate is projected to decrease from 775 to a projected 712. And again, these numbers, I call them, they're jello. They can and will change before October. This is our best estimate right now with the information that we have at this time. So we are projecting a mill rate of $7.12. And again, this tax levy is a slight decrease from the prior year.
That's generally good news when you see the mill rate decreasing, and part of that had to do with the payoff of the debt services, but we are also able to have certain increases. Like, for example, you can see there's more in the community service fund, but the overall mill rate is still declining. We're just putting things in correct buckets is the way that I would explain it, and moving forward.
So the next two graphs show what the mill rate looks like and then the mill rate and tax levy look like stacked on top of each other. The median home value in Waukesha County in the most recent report from the Wisconsin Policy Forum is roughly 310,000. So we've updated this graph to reflect the most recent information that we have at this time for a median home value. The mill rate then is multiplied for every $1,000 of property value to find what a homeowner's expense would be. So this is on a $310,000 home, what that mill rate looks like applied. And you'll see the mill rate, that graph dropping because the mill rate is dropping. However, we do know home values have been increasing. So therefore, the slide on, or that graph on the right, the blue line represents the total levy. So you can see that number is a slight drop from the prior year. However, it's been sort of fluctuating and staying in that same realm, right, roughly under $40 million. So keep in mind the mill rate is dropping, and we also look at that overall tax levy as well. So I'm gonna go into equalized versus assessed, which is very goofy. The way that is in state statutes for the way school districts have to calculate things and the way municipalities have to calculate things. It creates a lot of confusion and I think also misconceptions. So school districts are required to, per state statute, to use equalized property values provided by the Wisconsin Department of Revenue using fair market values. Then we give the levies to the municipalities and they are required to take the tax levy and divide it amongst the assessed value of the municipalities. So those two don't correlate or equal. And go ahead.
One thing to note that this page right here is when you receive your tax bill, this one page right here is probably the biggest piece of that you'll just want to memorize. That there's a different way that we're calculating things than some of the other taxing authorities that affect your bill. Which I know we're going to get into on future slides here.
Yes. So I think I'm assuming one of the concerns within our community, I've heard from a few people, is that, hey, my assessed value has really increased and I'm scared I'm going to pay a whole lot more in property taxes. So just because your home's assessed value has increased dramatically doesn't necessarily mean you will pay more in property taxes. It always goes back to everybody pays the portion of the total tax levy that their assessed value of their home makes up of the total assessed value of the district. So I'll say that a few times in a few different ways. In a hypothetical example, let's say the levy stays exactly the same from one year to the next. And let's say every person's home value increases by, call it 20%. If everybody's home value increases the same amount, the same percentage, everybody's still paying the same percentage of the levy. So if your home value, though, increases by a larger amount than your neighbors or a larger percentage than your neighbors, you could expect to pay a larger portion of the levy. So it always goes back to the proportion of your home's assessed value in relation to the total assessed value of the community.
So another way to look at it is my previous district, if you know where Lake Dubay is at, that was in the Menomonee School District, well, their property values went up like, I don't know, 30%. But in the mill town, right, of Menomonee itself, they didn't go up nearly as much. But when they compared the bills, they were like, what's going on? Why are we being treated different when it really had to do with their property values? And that's the same thing happens here, just at different levels. And
so just because assessed values are increasing doesn't directly correlate to the school district receiving more money. The school district will receive the amount of the total tax levy. So that total tax levy, as we've talked about, is projected to decrease by 1.68%. So just because everybody's property, I shouldn't say everybody, many people's property values are increasing doesn't necessarily mean the school district will receive more money. That's a separate formula. It's just basically how will that play out on your individual property tax bill. So what I did now is I took a screenshot of an actual property tax bill from 2022. So I'll kind of walk through what's on here and then how you can expect to, if you are interested in calculating based on our projected mill rate, your projected school district portion of your property tax bill for 2023. So this is an actual 2022 property tax bill, and you'll see in pink here, this first top section shows the assessed value of your home and the estimated fair market value, or equalized. Those two words are synonymous. So fair market value of your home. What the municipality does is calculates an assessment ratio. So simply it is the assessed value divided by the fair market value of your home, and that assessment ratio could be different for across the school district. the municipality. The municipality is required to keep that assessment ratio within a certain percentage of 100%, and every so often, the municipality is charged with going back and reassessing homes every so often. So that's what we've seen happen in this most recent time period here, where we've had a lot of property values reassessed. You'll then see on this lower section, these items highlighted in blue, and these are the different taxing entities that are showing up on your tax bill and taxing you as a homeowner. So you'll see this is a Menomonee Falls tax bill. So you'll see the County of Waukesha, you'll see Menomonee Falls Village, Waukesha County Technical College, and then Menomonee Falls 3437, that's our school district agency ID, so that's our ID with the state. So anytime you see Menomonee Falls 3437, that is the school district line on your tax bill. And then, which may or may not apply to people, the garbage and recycling at the bottom. So those are the different taxing entities on your tax bill. The two that apply to our school district are highlighted in green here. And again, that's the Menomonee Falls 3437, that's our school district. And then the school levy tax credit. So just to throw another complication in the formula, the state biennial budget puts a bucket of money out for the school levy tax credit. And then that is calculated for an individual's tax bill from the municipality. This school levy tax credit bucket of funds in the state biennial budget has increased from last year to this year. So what we could anticipate is an increase in the school levy tax credit on your individual home property bill. If you're trying to estimate in a conservative way, I would say assume your tax credit levy, your school tax credit levy credit will maintain the same number, but it's likely that that credit will actually increase. So the next slide here, I'm going to go through an actual formula of how you can take the school district's mill rate and calculate what you could expect on your tax bill. So the fair market value times the school tax mill rate less the school levy tax credit, this is a tongue twister, is the individual school portion of the tax bill. So in pink, you can see the estimated fair market value. If you're trying to estimate for next year or for this upcoming tax bill, you might increase your fair market value from last year to this year by name the percent. Right now, we're using a 7% increase. So you can do that math in whatever which way you want. Then we know that our projected tax mill rate is 712. We have to divide that by 1,000, so the easy way is to move the decimal over 2 places and take your fair market value times 0.00712, and then subtract out that tax levy credit to estimate what your individual portion of the tax bill will be related to the school district. So that formula kind of demystifies, is my hope, how we go from the mill rate to what your tax bill looks like.
And since there's only 2 slides left, I do want to say that no school of, this was created by the state. So this isn't something that we came up with to make your lives difficult. I just, because looking at this sort of thing, and I could see a couple of the eyes, some people are doing the math and figuring it out, that this formula was created out of political mess. Yeah, by the politicians. So we're looking at it, and it's a semester in graduate school, actually. And back in the day when I went to grad school, which is almost 20 some years ago, we had to run this out by hand. So when I was telling that to our business manager, who didn't have to do that because she went to grad school after me, much after me.
We're using spreadsheets over
here. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Those things really didn't exist when I went to grad school. Thank you very much. I just want you to know that this formula has been in place, and it's a political creation. We're doing our best to explain it. It is complicated. We're aware of it. If you have questions, feel free to reach out. There's some of us that understand it, just because we've lived in it for a long time. So feel free. Thank you, Kim.
Mm-hmm. So that is the majority of this presentation. I have 2 conclusion slides, and then we'll move into questions. So I promise we are almost done. It's been a long one. So we continue to plan cautiously and resourcefully into coming years. We know that ESSER ends at the end of 23-24, and because the state has funded lower than inflationary increases on average over the current and the last biennial budget, we are working to close a future budget gap, not 23-24, but into the future in coming years. We continue to be intentional and conservative in projecting future revenues and expenditures, and we utilize that long-term budget approach. So we're never looking at just 1 year at a time, we're looking long-term as we plan for our budget. We've realized significant financial benefits of previous cost control strategies. Huge one is our self-funded health insurance, which has been a giant savings within our budget. And we will continue to seek all cost-saving opportunities and create efficiencies to the extent possible as we move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Next is invitations for statements and questions from the audience. Speakers are requested to complete the speaker process and identification form found at the board information table.
You don't know who I am? Jeepers.
Please step up to the podium when called on and identify yourself by giving your name and the nature of the budget topic to be discussed. This is a public hearing and comments will be limited to the topics regarding only the annual budget. Comments will be limited to 2 minutes. I want to remind everybody to adhere to the rules of decorum and behavior noted on the speaker identification form. Ms. Smith, was there any forms submitted?
No, there weren't any. I got one. I'm almost done. I'm going to take it too. Miss Smith?
Yep,
Okay.
right over there. Thank you, thank you.
2 minutes, you said?
That was 2 minutes ago.
You didn't know I was a Bible salesman. It takes more than 2 minutes. So these are going to be really quick. If you don't have the answers, I'll be happy to get them from you, madam. And Mr. Munoz, thank you for being here. Your reputation precedes you, and we hear great things, and we're looking forward to you being here a long time, and the new legal counsel and all the new board members. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for what you're doing. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
So a lot of these are just yes or no, and I'll be very, very fast. So the ESSER ends this year, madam?
Yes.
2.3. And I don't mean to be offensive if I say madam. Would you prefer ma'am or miss? Or
Either.
Okay, good. We can get past that real fast. After that, we're done, right?
Correct.
Okay. So we're going to have to figure out some way to fix that mess.
Correct.
We'll deal with that. Number 2, the self-funded health. No increases for 5 years for the district as well as the employees. What's the breakdown? Is it 80-20, 50-50? What do you guys do?
87-13. District
Okay.
pays 87%, employees pay 13.
Okay, and then what's the totals, like $2-3 million a year for all the employees? Just off the top of your head, if you don't have it.
I'm not going to do it off the top of my head because I have the number in front of me, so give me 1 second.
Yeah, we'll-
Employee benefits as health insurance as a total is $4.6 million.
Perfect. Fund 38 is done, you said?
At the end of the 23-24 fiscal year.
And what was that total payoff, like a couple, $3 million?
The total remaining is about $750,000.
Perfect. And then Fund 39, you're going to refinance with interest rates going up?
We'll look at refinancing and whatever makes the most sense. We work with our financial advisors or municipal advisors.
Okay.
And they break out what makes the most sense. Right now, we're putting our money to work and earning interest on those dollars. If it doesn't make sense, we won't do it.
Got it. And then, Mr. Munoz, you said you don't have to borrow for your payroll. That's fantastic, and you're right. Most districts do. From a policy standpoint, is that something you want to have occur indefinitely, or will you monitor that on an annual basis?
Usually, there's a fund balance policy, so generally you want to sit around 25% for fund balance.
Yep.
We're higher than that.
Yeah, you're
But
at
the 25% threshold allows you, or any school district, not to have to short-term borrow.
Yeah.
Now, when interest rates are lower, some districts use short-term borrowing as a vehicle or as a plan. They actually target
Right.
short-term borrowing. But in the current environment, it makes absolutely
No sense.
little, if any, financial sense.
And that was my next question. Fund balance is at about $20,500,000, about? Does that sound about right? So that's where you borrow to help do this payroll thing, or you don't?
Right.
Okay.
So fund balance is not all cash, but it's Caitlin can explain it better, but
Yeah.
it's a vehicle of existing dollars so that we don't have to borrow.
So you borrow from yourself, essentially.
Yes.
Perfect. You pay yourself back with interest or nothing?
Yes, we borrow.
seriously.
We do. No, that's a great question. So
Yeah.
Actually,
we
yeah.
borrow, I call it cash. Yes, we borrow I shouldn't say borrow. We're earning interest on dollars that we don't have. So we look at what our low time is, which is right before our giant interest, our giant tax payment in January. So we look at what the difference is between, having 2 payrolls worth, having extra there, and then what we sit at as a low point, and we can borrow that we can invest that interest.
Got it. Thank you.
And she can correct me if I'm wrong with this, but I think we're sitting at 600-some thousand in earned interest.
Above what was budgeted. So it's almost $1 million we earned in interest in this past fiscal year, which is incredible. I mean,
So-
I'm telling you, like a few years ago, it was $16,000.
Sure. So we won't have any property tax bill pretty soon if this keeps going. I'm just saying. Okay, last thing, and then you're a hoot, man. I like you.
I
I'll
don't
tell
think
you.
that that's,
Okay, so the last thing is Fund 73. That's the post-retirement situation. Do we know about what that annual commitment is for the employees that work for the district that we're funding?
So we no longer have any retirees who, no longer work for the school district on our health insurance plan. So any retirees who had that as a part of their plan either have fallen off our plan now or are paying entirely on their own. So the district is no longer paying any portion of retirees' health insurance
And
premiums.
that was the 2021 thing on
Yep,
the
it was
slide.
completely satisfied in 2021, yes.
Muchos
so
gracias.
that's a post-employment benefits is sometimes misunderstood. So Fund 73 has nothing to do with the Wisconsin retirement system.
Right.
So the WRS, which most staff are part of, that's Fund 73 has nothing to do
With
with
that.
Wisconsin retirement system. We're talking about health insurance benefits, post-retirement, that sort of thing. Commitments that were made to our staff over time.
Right.
And to be fully funded in that plus is an extremely positive situation.
Yep.
In a good number of districts that you just have to look at their books and look to Fund 73, you can see that that is not the case.
Yep.
It is not common.
Again, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
My question is in regards to Fund 27, which is for special education. Does that include gifted education? I understand last year there was $0 budgeted for gifted students within the district.
Fund 27 does not include gifted and talented education. That happens within our Fund 10 operating budget.
And what is that balance for this?
The amount that's allocated, I'll
Yeah.
have to look that up. I don't have that off the top of my head. It's not a specific category that we break out on this packet, but I can look that up. If you want to send me an email with your contact information, then I
Okay,
can send
because
you.
I think there would be other parents that would be interested. That's the
Sure,
only reason I'm asking.
of course. Thank you.
I think I gave you a business card at the start. Why don't you go ahead, you can go ahead and shoot me an email and I will forward it to the business office to make sure to get you that answer.
Any other questions or comments?
It was one of the last slides. This one? No, the property tax bill from '22. Yeah. That'll work. So the question is, on the mill rate for the school district, in '22, here we approved, well, it's not what we approved, but it says $7.75. And when we get our tax bill, it's $10.53.
Yes.
Where's the
So that
difference
is the
come from?
exact, what you're seeing play out there is exactly how Equalize is not assessed. So what they're showing, they as in the municipality on the tax bill, is showing our tax levy divided by the assessed value of the district.
Right.
So you can do the math in that way or in the Equalize way and get the same answer basically. So the 1053 on this
Because
example.
our equalize is higher, higher, so the rate
Yep.
is higher.
So in this example,
okay.
like if you took 1053 times 352,800.
I
So I'm
see.
looking at the assessed
Right.
total times the assessed mill rate. Or you can look at the equalized total compared to the equalized mill rate or times the equalized mill rate.
Perfect.
So that's why it's so goofy, because we're doing two different things per state statute, so.
I get it. Everybody else get it?
good
Yes,
question.
I'm here. So this Jello thing, how do we vote on a mill rate that's Jello? Does our board
That's a great question.
vote on it again in the final when they get the final? So
Yes.
the representatives are voting on this eventually? Because last year, I remember you proposed a rate and then you get the tax bill and it's totally something different.
So what happens tonight is that the community approves the levy, and it's still Jello. So again, there are factors that firm up in October.
I hate voting on Jello, so.
I know, I
Explain
feel yeah,
it.
it's weird. It's weird because we're approving our budget now, you know, and it's a few months into this year already. And then what happens in October is those final factors come out. So we have our final pupil count, our resident membership. We have equalized property value, and we have our equalized aid. And those affect our overall revenue and our overall tax levy, and therefore our mill rate. And then our board approves the budget at the end of October.
One of the big things that makes it not final, and the reason we have to come to October, is that 2 times a year, every school district in the state must count every student, and that's how we get paid. So, meaning from the state. So to make this formula work, and the reason that we're using the word Jello is that we need to finalize every student, and are they here,
Sure.
are they in TOSA, there's a lot of little are they homeless, which would be a different law called McKinney-Vento. So that in and of itself, we need to count every student, the state needs to verify that count, and then that gets fed into the formula, and then by October, it's finalized. So that's one of the major pieces that we're finalizing.
And this meeting has to happen now in September. Why doesn't it happen then after we have the final numbers?
Right.
You know, if this is
There's
statutory through the state that the residents have to vote on this now, but then ultimately it's, what we vote on is incorrect.
what we're voting on is advisory to say we're giving you our best estimate without having final pupil counts verified, because each pupil, I know this is going to sound, but it's a state thing, it's totally true, that every student was assigned a number. So if they float from, say, Milwaukee to here, because they moved, say, for example, then their number has to move, and then the state has to verify that their number is no longer MPS, but it's actually here. So that the flow of the dollars, so that's part of it that we're going, and that happens on the 3rd Friday in September, and that happens in the 2nd, 3rd Friday in January-ish. So there's 2 counts a year that help us really dial in on the exact number.
Sure.
And that's that pupil count. But there's other aspects of the law that we have to do. The first version of the budget, this version, which is advisory, and then the final. It's state stuff.
Okay, so this isn't as binding as it was once sold on then, this meeting with the residents.
It's extremely, it's our best estimate at this time, but it's accurate to say, to be extremely specific, that we're counting all the students, but every district in the state is doing the same. And then
Right,
the
and having the same meeting at the same time of the year.
So there could be money that shifts from here to there and between districts, and that's the shift. We're pretty close. I think last year, the estimate was within,
A few FTE, a handful of FTE.
yeah, like
Student count.
Yeah, it wasn't far off. It was
0.05 or
30 cents
something,
I don't know.
wasn't it? 0.05?
It was close. The
Yeah,
estimate.
something. It was like 0.05. So it's not insignificant, any change, obviously, when it comes to what we pay, in taxes. But I think we're pretty close. And it really comes down to some situations beyond our control, meaning if somebody's living in a certain place, but it's not permanent and there really are students, then we shouldn't be sending the state money to another district.
Right, totally understand. Just
Okay.
from the general standpoint, you give us this number, then it changes. So you've explained why, but again, I don't know why we don't vote then when we have the actual numbers
Yep, we're required to
do it right now.
do this in this fashion. There's a handbook for how you, and the timelines that we have to complete these things by.
Okay, thanks.
I apologize for that.
Any other questions, comments?
Hi, I just have a quick question on one of the line items on the budget on page 7. I'm just wondering under line 43 for the support faculty. I'm sorry, let me just. Yeah, I believe it's next to the support faculty. That was reduced by almost 100,000. I'm just wondering why that changed there.
So you'll be able to see 22, like if you look at the column headers, 22, 23 is budgeted dollars and the prior years are audited. So when you look at the prior, audited meaning final actual dollars that were spent. So when you look at the prior years, 2021 and 21-22, you'll see they're just about 300,000. 22-23's budgeted number of 465 was high. So we're just bringing those budget dollars in line with actuals.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments, questions? All right, we've come to the conclusion of the budget hearing. I need a motion to adjourn the meeting and convene into the annual board meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn annual budget meeting and convene into the annual board meeting.
I'll second. Board Member Stuhlen, motion, and seconded by Board Member Grant. All those in favor? Say aye. Those opposed? Motion is passed, and we are heading to the annual meeting. All right, good evening. I'd like to introduce myself again. My name is Dr. Nina Christensen, Board of Education President. The annual meeting of the School District of Menomonee Falls is called to order. Welcome to the September 11th, 2023 annual meeting, taking place at the Menomonee Falls High School Auditorium, located at N80 W14350 Titan Drive, Menomonee Falls 53051. This meeting is being broadcast live on the Falls Cable Access YouTube channel. A later viewing will be available on our board website page. Would you please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This meeting has been appropriately posted according to Wisconsin Statute 19.84 Public Notice. The annual meeting is statutorily required and provide district residents with an opportunity to critique the operation of the school district. It is also a time for the school board and administration to help the community focus on the achievements, needs, and future of the district. By statute, on or before November 1st, the school board has the duty to vote on a tax sufficient to operate and maintain the school district. If the annual meeting fails to do so, or if the annual meeting votes a tax that violates statutory revenue limits, the school board must lower the tax to bring it into compliance with the revenue limit. We take specific direction on running of the annual meeting from statute, from our attorneys, and from the annual school district meeting handbook published by the Wisconsin Association of School Boards. I'd like to introduce the board members on our panel here. Joining me at the table from my far left is board member Sarah Wren, board member Jennifer Grant, board member Chris Stuhlen, legal counsel Chrissy Hamill. To my immediate right, Superintendent of Schools David Munoz, board member Shelley Holzman, board member Carrie Deuce, board member Joel Wappert, Director of Finance and Operations, Ms. Caitlin Windler, and Assistant to the Superintendent and Board, Ms. Kim Smith. Ms. Smith will be recording the minutes of the meeting and serving as the timekeeper. Non-resident administrators and staff are stationed in the auditorium and will serve as tellers to assist with the voting. The first item are agenda rules of the annual meeting. Upon entering the auditorium, you should have received handouts containing paper ballots and a QR code to access the meeting agendas, a budget hearing booklet with the treasurer's report, and the information sheet detailing tonight's rules of order. Paper copies are available if you do not have a smartphone or QR code access. To be a qualified voter at the annual meeting, you must be a resident of the Menomonee Falls School District for at least 28 days prior to today, September 11th, 2023. You must also be a U.S. citizen and at least 18 years of age. This meeting will be conducted according to Robert's Rules of Order. Separate seating has been designated for residents and non-residents. Individuals wishing to make a motion must indicate this by raising their hand and waiting to be recognized by the chairperson. When recognized, please move to the microphone in the aisle and state your name, address, prior to making the motion. A second to the motion can come from any seated elector in the audience. Tonight's voting can be conducted either by a standing vote or a paper ballot for the agenda's major items. If the standing vote is inconclusive, we will resort to paper ballots. Only district residents may speak, vote, and make motions. Any elector has the right to challenge the residency of someone attempting to vote. If this happens, a process outlined by the statute will be implemented. Residents wishing to debate or speak to a motion will be asked to come to the microphone, state your name and address, and proceed. The time limit for speakers is 2 minutes per person and shall not exceed 1 hour. Any elector may speak once on any given motion. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda and rules for the September 11th, 2023 annual meeting? Can you please step up to the mic?
Pastor Wayne Van Gelderen, no, that's not my name. Sorry, Pastor. Jefferson Davis, West 169, North 8630 Sheridan Drive, Menomonee Falls, across from North Middle School and the new splash pad. Do I have to make a formal motion, or I make a motion that we approve what you just said? Yeah.
Is there a second?
Second.
Can you come to the mic?
We
I
just-
don't know who seconded.
Yep, there we go.
Thank you.
Sean Dean, N88W15130 Cleveland Avenue. I second the motion.
Thank you.
Thank you. There is a motion and a second to approve the agenda rules. Is there any discussion? Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda and rules for the annual meeting. All those in favor, please stand. Looks pretty inclusive.
Yeah.
Please be seated. Any opposed? Please stand. Okay. The motion passes and the agenda and the rules are approved. At the annual meeting, every resident has an equal vote. At this time, I'd like to invite school board members to join their fellow electors in the audience.
Only if they They really didn't give us anything. So.
All right. At this point, I'll open nominations for a chairperson to conduct the annual meeting. Are there any nominations? Will you please stand up to them.
Good evening, Alice Barblin, North 80, West 15039, Appleton Avenue, Menomonee Falls. I nominate Nina Christensen to be the chairperson for tonight's meeting.
Is there a second?
Sarah.
Please
Sarah, right?
stand up. You have to stand up.
Sarah Wren, W170N7712, Trails End Court in Menomonee Falls. I will second.
Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Since there are no other nominations, if there are no objections, the nominations are closed. We have a motion and a second to elect myself, Nina Christensen, as the chairperson for tonight's meeting. All those in favor, please stand. Thank you. Please be seated. All those opposed, please stand. Okay, the motion passes, and myself, Nina Christensen, is elected chairperson for the meeting. Next item is a look ahead to the new school year, 23-24. I would like to introduce our superintendent of schools, Mr. David Munoz, who will be providing the highlights regarding the school district of Menomonee Falls.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody, for being here and taking the time out of your night, especially if you happen to be Aaron Rodgers fans, which I am not. Go Jordan Love. I love the Packers, though. I'm a Packer fan.
Calm down up here.
All right. But we'll move right along. I am using two different presentations. Wanted to list the mission and the vision, but also thank the school board for their service. All the school board members who are here and who have served in the past, or those that choose to do it in the future. It's a great amount of work. I work with school boards for a number of years, and they're as good as any or better, so I'm very thankful to be working with them as superintendent. Okay, just aligning myself to what's on the screen. So the big aims of the district, these 4 aims, the staff that are in the room are familiar with seeing this, less familiar, I think, for community members. But things that we work on is successfully transitioning to college and work prepared for their future. All students and families feel they belong in our schools and communities. All students and adults are engaged, learning, and improving. And all students and families and staff members feel we're a school district of choice. Now, one of the things, me being new here, just a couple of months, I've been very welcomed by lots of groups. The staff have been amazing. The community has been wonderful, and those that have welcomed me individually. So if this is how you treat new members of the community, then I wish there were more land available. But I can tell you right now, it's hard to find in Menomonee Falls, right? We're working on that. So guiding principles, there we go. Some key guiding principles. We've put some focus on school safety. As I've come into the district, increased from 2 to 3 school resource officers, went to all the principals, and we had a commitment to, I asked them, give me needs, give me security needs, and we're gonna look at that ESSER funding and spend a chunk of it to make sure that we're doing that. And that is a commitment. I wish it was learning first, but it's safety and security first, and so the health and safety of our students and our employees, it's front and center, along with social emotional health, the parents' health, community, but then also get into learning at high levels. We'll get to a few slides about graduation rate in just a second. Some service excellence through our guiding principles. This has been an excellent piece for me to familiarize myself with, but I think it's outstanding work. There's been alignment with continuous improvement in this district, which I'll get to in just a second, which is on this very next slide. So the school district of Menomonee Falls is well known, not just locally, but throughout the state, for a focus on what's called continuous improvement. And there's a process, there's a plan, there's a lot of specific involvement with staff, but also with students. This is something with certain transitions in the last couple of years that might have fallen to the wayside, but we have put a renewed focus into this area more recently. With full implementation, of all 8 components. It's something we're working on reinvigorating this year. Several staff have done some wonderful presentation with many of our new staff to the district, who I think will be in a future slide here in just a second. But before I get to that, I do want to show us something right off the state website. If you go to the state website, you are going to see the graduation rate in the school district of Menomonee Falls is actually quite high, very high, like 97.8% according to that slide. But of course we want that to be 100%. So I want to run through this a little bit so you understand that that's amongst the highest in the state. But I do want to look at some comparisons on this next slide over the years. So high school completion, anywhere from 98.6% to 99.4%. This is one of those things about the state of Wisconsin and how they do business, but there's a lot of reasons why students don't graduate in 4 years. So you'll see on the far left slide where it says 4-year cohort, 4-year rate, 2022 cohort, but then it goes 4, 5, 6, and 7-year cohort. I think it needs to be a solid understanding that public school educators, we don't stop when they turn 18, we stop when they graduate. So there's a lot of specific reasons why students will not end by the time they're 18. It might be written into an IEP that they attend school until the day before they're 21, for example. The state actually counts that against us, oddly enough, which could be all of those students, right? There's other reasons as well, if they're credit deficient, that kind of thing. But one of the main reasons is certain students inside of their IEPs have goals that go beyond 18 years. They go 19, 20, right before they're 21. And we're mandated to assist until the age of 21. So that's why when you see this number, 90, when you see 98, 97, and 99%, that doesn't mean the rest are dropping out. That means we're taking a few extra years to successfully complete IEPs, for example, or alternative paths to graduation, right? And the last slide is probably the hardest to understand slide, but it talks about high school non-completions. Make a note that it doesn't talk about dropouts, right? These are non-completers. So if we're one of a few states in the union, actually, that requires graduate attendance until 18 years old. Illinois, for example, they allow them to drop out at 16, right? And the same with Michigan. It just happens you have a few states up here, Minnesota and Wisconsin, that have mandatory attendance to 18. So when you think about that, the vast majority of states in the United States, they allow students to drop out at 16. I'm not advocating for that. I'm saying the state of Wisconsin, this is a wonderful number because you can actually see the individual numbers. If you look at the 7-year cohort, there's 2 students, only 2 students. In a district of this size, you know, you want that to be 0, but that's a really high level of success in terms of high school completion. Notice they didn't finish in 4 years, I'm talking about 7. And that's an important thing, you know, to articulate. And this is right off the state website, so you can click and see it in WiseDash. I just wanted to hit that for everybody. We did welcome many new staff to the district. When we did the staff welcome, there's several staff here, there was a little bit of a shock and awe piece with all the new staff, because there were quite a few. But we're excited to welcome the new staff, largely because then I'm not the only new person, right? So they enjoy that little quip as well. So I'm still the one finding the different places around the district, but I think I'm doing pretty good so far. And this is the shock and awe slide, because it's more than just that picture. There, yeah, you got it too. So there was a lot of new staff that we welcomed to the district this year, which we're excited to do. And I do want to thank our HR director, which she is here somewhere, perhaps. She's in the lobby welcoming people, but she's done an amazing job. If you see her, it's a lot of work to get that many people onboarded and working in the school district. So we're excited about that. National Board Certified Employees. I want to leave this up there for a second. We did make a mistake on one slide here in the staff presentation. I did get the names up there, but all of these staff are National Board Certified. it's equivalent to being at a PhD level for a teacher. It's that high of a level of certification. And for us to have this many staff members with national board certification is in and of itself to be noted and is a wonderful piece. I mean, usually you have a couple, but these are all the staff, and those that are parents here, which many of you are, of course, that's a wonderful testament to that work. Several of our division leaders are here helping us as you're welcoming them in, like I've mentioned a few, but the rest are sitting in the back. Why don't you guys all stand up? Thank you all. We'll just do that really quick. If you just want to look in the back over here. I do want to thank them for being very welcoming to me and understanding that while I do love the Packers and I was in the stadium in 1982 for the Brewers, you know, Aaron Rodgers, I don't know, he's different now than what he was a few years ago. So I'm with you though. Go Packers. All right, a couple of the year in highlights. Let me just hit the right slide. Okay, sorry, just clicking in the wrong direction there. Now you've seen all these pictures already, so I'll just give you a general overview. There's been a lot of improvements. We have great facility and grounds director, we have great staff. So all these improvements are current, they're right off the budget slides. So there's been a lot of work. You know, you're like, oh, I come around and I see some things happening. There's a lot going on in terms of physical improvements. You can see the high school changes are right here, a little larger pictures, you saw that earlier. That's an impressive change and an important change. It's unfortunate that we have to focus that on today's day and age. When I was going to school at LP Goodrich High School in Fond du Lac, you kind of just walked in and walked out whenever. We just don't live in that environment anymore, unfortunately. All right, this is relatively new information. One of the best school districts in Wisconsin, we were ranked number 15th. Last year, I believe it was 19th, so that's great news. The district continues to do very well with respect to academic achievement and whatever led to this score. 288 students enrolled in one of 5 academies, which is outstanding. Either the Healthcare Academy, Design Communication Academy, the Business Academy, the STEM Academy, and Future Educators Academy. That's awesome. I hope we can get more people in that Future Educators Academy. That would help us with some of the employment challenges that we're working through. 109 AP scholars, 109 AP scholars. I can tell you from experience, I used to run a high school similar to this, except Menomonee with an I. I did that for about 10 years. That's a big number. That's a big, great number right there. Community scholarships, $425,000 in community scholarships were issued by you, by the community to our seniors, which is an amazing number. And several other great things going on around the district. This is just me running around the district in the last couple of weeks. Had a wonderful start to the school district. I did have one taping with John Mercure. I think it went okay. It was really fun to be able to talk to him about the great things that we hope to do. We'll have a presentation with him talking about the new high school entrance. That'll be coming up. That's a little bit of an anticipatory set. It's like a teacher talk kind of thing. But we'll be talking a little bit about school safety and the focus on that as we move into this school year. Continue to have excellence. Looks like FBLA at North, and a lot of other resources, mental health resources for families, staying aligned with my slides over here. But one of the things as I jump to the last slide, what I can tell you is being here for about a week or 2 weeks with the students and staff, that I remember meeting a student at the middle school, first day of school, and he was a 6th grader, so he was, you know, they weren't there yet, it was just 6th graders. And he was a nice young man, and I met him in the lunchroom, and then I met him at the end of the day, because he was picking up one of his siblings with his parent over at Ben Franklin. He comes up to me and goes, "I know you." you were the guy that told me to be a good citizen in the lunchroom. And I go, yes, I was. I have no idea you are, but I think I'm gonna try that. I'm like, well, so that, students are the same, where you are. I've had a great deal of fun moving around to the different buildings. Was at Shady Lane today. It's a wonderful school. I've been in all the buildings multiple times, to be quite honest. And what I can tell you, this is a wonderful district, and I'm honored to be part of it. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you for that presentation. Next is the treasurer's report. Jennifer Grant, Board Treasurer, will now take a few moments to share the treasurer's annual report. Good evening. I'm Jennifer Grant. I'm the elected treasurer of the school board. And as mentioned, I am here to give the treasurer's report, which is a high-level summary of the last fiscal or school year. So I know we've sat through a lengthy presentation already on finances, much of which is focused on the upcoming year. Certainly I'm going to touch upon a few of the things that Caitlin has already mentioned. So as we've done for the past number of years, the board, in conjunction with the district's administration team, has responsibly managed the funds so generously provided by this community. We ended the 2022-23 school year with a balanced budget. In fact, we added approximately $1.4 million to the general fund balance. Of this amount, $1.2 million consists of funds assigned for continuing capital projects that will take place this upcoming year, which then results in a net addition of $200,000 to fund balance. Again, Caitlin gave an excellent presentation and talked about what that $1.2 million consists of. We began the year at nearly $19.1 million in fund balance, ended the year at almost $20.5 million, and will see a net ending balance of $19.3. During the year, $72.3 million was received and $68 million was dispersed by the district across all of the funds. The 2022-23 school year was the second of 2 years with a $0 increase from the state revenue limits, or again, what we would call per pupil aids. The significant dollar amounts of the federal ESSER revenues handed out during the COVID years made it difficult for the state legislature to also authorize additional increases to schools as they normally would have. Our district made the decision to utilize some of these ESSER dollars for budget stabilization. Due to positive budget variances in 2022-23, $800,000 of the $1.8 million of ESSER funds that were allocated for budget stabilization in 2022-23 were not expended and have rolled over into the next year. These ESSER funds will be used in 23-24 on safety upgrades, including additional cameras, updated wireless access points for improved Wi-Fi, and curriculum adoptions in the English language arts and social studies subject areas. Our medical expenses incurred in 22-23 trended higher than the previous year. However, those amounts are still supported within the budget. As a self-funded organization, medical expenses can be difficult to predict and should not be spent on other items in the district. A good year of medical expenses should be saved in the fund balance to protect us from bad years that could happen in the future. In 2022-23, a number of high-cost claimants and increased prescription drug costs contributed to our overall increased medical expenses. We will continue to watch these areas carefully. Finally, we will continue adjusting operations based on expected revenues. The 2023-24 fiscal year is the first year of the state's biennial budget, and districts are receiving an additional $325 per student as part of the revenue limit formula. It is also the final year to expend ESSER funds, and our district will be using $1.5 million as budget stabilization. As mentioned earlier, an additional $800,000 has also been rolled over from the prior year and will be used to fund a number of large one-time purchases. The district is again planning for a balanced budget in 2023-24, as was presented by Ms. Windler. We are planning cautiously and resourcefully in upcoming years. ESSER funding comes to an end at the conclusion of 23-24 fiscal year. Across the 21-23 and the 23-25 state biennial budgets, state funding is lower than inflationary increases over the same time period. The result of these factors is a budget gap in the 24-25 fiscal year and beyond, and that the district is proactively working to close. Another notable item, our fund balance of $19.3 million for general funds and special education represents 35.8% of our annual spend. This is a healthy and reasonable fund balance in the range of board policy and is a best practice. It reduces short-term borrowing during the year and helps protect the district since we are self-insured on our health plan. Also, having a healthy fund balance maintains a good credit rating and better interest rates for when we do issue short-term and long-term debt. Fund balance also allows for prudent contingency planning for long-term budget forecasts. Of the remaining funds combined, such as debt service, food service, capital projects, and community services, receipts in those funds was $12.7 million and disbursements were $8.9 million. In conclusion, our district continues to be in a solid financial position. I am confident that we will continue to adapt and find efficiencies in the coming years to close future funding gaps, and that the controls we have put in place continue to match or exceed expectations. And this completes my treasurer's report for the year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next are our action items. The first is approval of the minutes. The next item on the agenda is to approve the minutes of the annual budget hearing and annual meeting from September 12, 2022. Do I have a motion?
My name is Brad Hoffman. I live at W142 and 6349 Mill Ridge Drive, and I move to approve the minutes from the September 12th, 2022 budget hearing and annual meeting.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I second the motion.
Can we have your name?
Ray Cron, Menomonee Falls, 53051.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from the September 12, 2022 annual budget hearing and annual meeting. All those in favor, please stand. All right, thank you. Please be seated. Those opposed? Please stand. All right, the motion is approved. Next item on our agenda is to authorize the school board to manage or dispose of school district property as needed. This does not include land or buildings, but smaller items, for example, trading in a truck or selling old furniture or recycling computers, etc. Do I have a motion?
Hello, my name is Joel Wappert. I reside at N85 W17082 Lee Place. I am a resident of the school district of Menomonee Falls. I move to authorize the school board to manage and or dispose of school district property as needed.
And do we have a second?
I'll second that. Chris Slinker, N78 W13022 Country Club Court.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to authorize the school board to manage or dispose of school district property as needed. Is there any discussion? All right, it's been moved and seconded to authorize the school board to manage or dispose of school district property. All those in favor, please stand. Thank you. Please be seated. Those opposed, please stand. The motion is approved. The next item on the agenda is to set salaries and authorize the reimbursement of travel expenses for board members. Do I have a motion to set the salaries for board president and board members and to authorize travel reimbursements for board members?
Hello, my name is Shelley Holzman, and my address is W132N6795 Westview Court, Menomonee Falls. I'm a resident of Menomonee Falls School District. I move to freeze the school board salaries at the current rate of $5,000 yearly for board members and $5,500 for the board president, and to authorize reimbursement to board members for travel expenses incurred in the fulfillment of board service.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Ray Cron, Menomonee Falls, 53051. I second the motion.
There's been a motion and a second to set the school board members' salaries at the rate of $5,000 yearly for members and $5,500 for the president, and to authorize the reimbursement of board members of travel expenses incurred in the fulfillment of board services. Is there any discussion? It's been moved and seconded to freeze school board members' salaries at the current rate of $5,000 yearly for members and $5,500 for president, and to authorize the reimbursement to board members for travel expenses incurred in the fulfillment of board services. All those in favor, please stand. Thank you. Please be seated. Those opposed, please stand. Motion is approved. The next item on our agenda is to authorize the school board to lease suitable buildings for a period not exceeding 20 years with annual rentals fixed by the lease. Do I have a motion?
Hello, my name is Chris Stuland, and my address is N77W17161 Overlook Trail. I'm a resident of Menomonee Falls School District. I move to authorize the School District of Menomonee Falls Board of Education to lease suitable buildings.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Sean Dean, N88, W15130, Cleveland Avenue, resident of the school district. I second the motion.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to authorize the school board to lease suitable buildings for a period not exceeding 20 years with annual rentals fixed by the lease. Are there any discussions? It's been moved and seconded to authorize the school board to lease suitable buildings for a period not exceeding 20 years with annual rentals fixed by the lease. All those in favor, please stand. Thank you. Please be seated. Those opposed, please stand. The motion is approved. The next item on our agenda is to authorize the school board to lease school district sites not needed for school purposes. Do I have a motion?
My name is Sarah Wren, W170N7712 Trails End Court, Menomonee Falls, and I motion to authorize the School District of Menomonee Falls Board of Education to lease sites not needed for school purposes.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that. Chris Slinker, Country Club Court, Menomonee Falls.
I have a motion and a second to authorize the school board to lease school district sites not needed for school purposes. Is there any discussion? So it's been moved and seconded to authorize the school board to lease school district sites not needed for school purposes. All those in favor, please stand. Thank you. Please be seated. Those opposed, please stand. The motion is approved. Next is the budget hearing was held prior to this meeting where a thorough explanation of the proposed 23-24 budget was presented. I'm now looking for a resolution on the tax levy. Is there a motion?
Hello, my name is Jennifer Grant, and my address is N90 West 20829 Scenic Drive. I am a resident of the Menomonee Falls School District. I move to approve $37,999,533 to be levied on the taxable property of the School District of Menomonee Falls, County of Waukesha, Wisconsin, for the purpose of defraying the operation and maintenance of the public schools for the 2023-2024 school year.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Lynette Shepherd, North 92, West 17761, White Oak Circle, Menomonee Falls. I second the motion.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to approve $37,999,533 to be levied on the taxable property of the School District of Menomonee Falls, County of Waukesha, Wisconsin, for the purposes of defraying the operation and maintenance of the public schools for the 23-24 school year. The floor is now open to discussion. Any comments?
Just one quickie. Yeah, sorry. How many kids do we have? Jefferson Davis up there by North. How many kids do we have?
3,900.
Ooh, that's doing this, isn't it?
Yes.
Considerably or minimally?
It's a steady line, but it's not a super steep slope.
Even with all the new homes we're building in this town, I know a lot of them are in Sussex. You're kidding me.
Yep.
I'm gonna have more kids, I guess.
It's been moved and seconded to approve $37,999,533 to be levied on the taxable property of the School District of Menomonee Falls, County of Waukesha, Wisconsin, for the purposes of defraying the operations and maintenance of the public schools for the 23-24 school year. All those in favor, please signify by standing. Thank you. You may be seated. Those opposed, please stand. Okay, the 23-24 tax levy is approved. The next agenda item is to give the school board the authority to set a date and time for the next year's annual meeting, September 9th, 2024, following the 6:30 budget hearing. Do I have a motion?
Yes. Melissa Kempf, W158N6523, Pawnee Court. I move to give the school board the authority to set the date for the 2024 annual meeting.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Rob Stinson in 90W20563, Hillview Drive, Menomonee Falls, a resident of Menomonee Falls in the school district. I second the motion.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second to authorize the Board of Education to set the date for the 2024 annual meeting. Is there any discussion? All right, we have a motion and a second to authorize the Board of Education to set the date and time for the 2024 annual meeting. All those in favor, please stand. Thank you. Those opposed, please stand. The motion is approved. We have arrived at the end of the annual meeting agenda. There being no further business, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Hi, my name is Jennifer Brandt. I'm sorry, I'm just reading my notes here. And I still live on Scenic Drive. I'm a resident of Menomonee Falls School District, and I move to adjourn the 2023 annual meeting.
Do I have a second?
Sean Dean, Cleveland Ave, second the motion.
There's been a motion and a second to adjourn. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please stand. Thank you. You may be seated.
Sure, I'll stick around, that's fine.
Thank you for joining us for the budget hearing and annual meeting. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everybody. Go Packers.
I'd like to call the September 11th, 2023 Menomonee Falls Board of Education meeting. Will you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Smith, was the meeting properly posted?
Yes, it was.
This is the School District of Menomonee Falls Board of Education meeting. It is being held at Menomonee Falls High School Auditorium at N80 W14350 Titan Drive, Menomonee Falls 53051. This meeting will be broadcast by Falls Cable Access and can be viewed live on the Falls Cable Access YouTube channel. To watch the recorded meeting, please visit our website at www.fallsschools.org/board. This is a regular meeting of the Board of Education. Ms. Smith, can you do roll call attendance?
Yes. Board Member Sarah Wren.
Here.
Board Member Jennifer Grant.
Here.
Board Member Chris Stuhlin.
Here.
Board Member Nina Christensen.
Here.
Board Member Shelley Holzman.
Here.
Board Member Carrie Deuce.
Here.
And Board Member Joel Whopper.
Here.
I need a motion to approve today's meeting agenda.
A motion.
Motion's been made by Board Member Holzman and seconded by Board Member Grant. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, next item, vouchers payable.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the vouchers in the amount of $1,009,288.37, covering the dates from August 25th through September 7th of 2023.
Second. Comments, discussion?
Some points of interest. We saw a lot of highlights earlier in our meeting this evening regarding some of the enhancements that have been made to our facilities, and so some of those invoices hit. So we had utilities that hit on this period. We also had approximately $230,000 worth of the roof project at North, which we saw photos for. We had approximately $6,000 for an HVAC motor at North. We had approximately $130,000 of new lunchroom cold carts at North, and in addition, we had approximately $80,000 for hot and cold wells in our cafeterias at the elementary and high schools.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion's passed. Has everybody had a chance to take a look at the consent agenda items? Any questions, any discussions? I need a motion to approve the consent agenda items.
Motion.
Motion by Board Member Wren. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Board Member Stuhlin. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? This concludes our meeting. So I need a motion to adjourn our Board of Education meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
By Board Member Grant, motion. Second by Board Member Wappert. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. This meeting is adjourned.